Mark Levin here. After any presidential election, I take time to reevaluate my own financial investments. That's why I continue to invest in gold for help with my financial protection. When it comes to gold, I only trust Advantage Gold. They're a top gold company in America, and that's who I turn to for my own gold purchases. Call them now at 800-900-8000. That's 800-900-8000 for a free gold investment kit. And see if you qualify for up to $1,000 in free silver. That's 800-900-8000. And tell them Mark Levin sent you. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. You know, it does my heart good to see the fight over spending. I want to welcome Elon Musk to the battle. I seem to recall at one point he was backing Obama. Wasn't he, Mr. Producer? I'm just trying to remember. Something like that. But he's come full circle, and that's a good thing. We need him. But we need more than him. 2015 in a book called Plunder and Deceit. I wrote this book. George Mason University economics professor Dr. Walter Williams rightly describes the underlying pathology driving the nation to economic and financial ruin as a moral problem. Many of you got this book. We've been an immoral people demanding that Congress forcibly use one American to serve the purposes of another. Walt Williams, the late, great Walter Williams, a dear friend. He was my first guest on my first Life, Liberty, and Levin on the inaugural show. First one. Deficits and runaway national debt are merely symptoms of the real problem, he said. As Williams states, nearly 75% of today's federal spending can be described as Congress taking the earnings of one American to give to another through the thousands of handout programs such as farm subsidies, business bailouts, and welfare. And some of the people today leading the battle over this continuing resolution to kill it support ethanol, which is a subsidy. And I don't want to take calls on this. I don't want to hear from people who are subsidized, from various corn growers and so forth, and I'm somebody who loves corn. Dr. Thomas Sowell, senior fellow at the Hoover Institution, Stanford University, at least then, remember this was 2015, notes that there was a time when the purpose of taxes was to pay the inevitable costs of government. To the political left, however, taxes have long been seen as a way to redistribute income and finance other social experiments based on a liberal ideology. But it's not just to the left, it's Republicans too. The consequences for the rising generation, as I called, and future generations of the statist's immoral, politically expedient, and economically ruinous behavior and policies are unambiguous, as evidenced by statistic after statistic, which are mainly ignored, discounted, or excused by most of the media, academia, and, of course, governing status. Now, I'm going to tell you why almost everybody in this debate is a phony. Even many in the Freedom Caucus. Why many in this debate are phonies. They're fighting over discretionary spending, which is a good fight to have, but it's also a small percentage of the budget now. A significant majority of the budget goes towards so-called entitlements. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and other entitlements. Now, many of you might be shocked. You, like I, have spent a lifetime paying into Social Security and Medicare. I'm 67 now. I received Medicare. I didn't even want to receive Medicare. I wanted to keep my private health care. Medicare said that's against the law. And the private health insurer said, we're not allowed to, whether we could or not. So we won't. If they're contributing all the money I've contributed to Medicare, Mr. Producer, I didn't want to be a part of it, and I was forced to. Shocking. I don't want to be a part of Social Security, but I'm forced to. God knows how much money I've poured into Social Security. I don't want to be a part of it, but I will receive some back. And here's the thing. Nobody in the executive branch, nobody to my mind in the legislative branch, nobody beating their chests, pounding the drums, patting themselves on the back of the heads as real budget cutters want to touch Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, children's health insurance program, and so forth. Nobody. Nobody. And yet they're going bankrupt. The trustees for Medicare and Social Security have told us they're going broke. Now, right now. And nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody. But I'll talk about it. All the tough guys out there want to fight over what are really essentially crumbs. This is make and break. As I wrote back then, Social Security and the federal government's health care programs, Medicare, Medicaid, children's health insurance program, and subsidies related to Obamacare will double in relative costs over the next several decades. Again, 2015, I wrote this. The past 40 years have together consumed an average of 7% of the GDP. However, they're expected to increase to 14% by 2039. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid account for 60% of the government non-interest expenditures in recent years. It's more than that now, closer to 70%. For example, in 1970, social programs accounted for 32% of total expenditures. Social programs grew to 44% of federal expenditures in 1980 and 1990, 54% in 2000. They were promoted as safety net programs for the protection of the poor and the elderly and the vulnerable. But in each case, the programs have snowballed and have become unsustainable. The Congressional Budget Office, CBO, expects their spending percentages to continue increasing indefinitely. Although this topic will be addressed, and I say more fully in another chapter, suffice it to say, the Social Security benefit cost explosion has been predicted for decades. There are currently 58 million people receiving Social Security benefits, probably closer to 78 million today. By 2024, that number will grow to 77 million. There I was, close. 2039, there will be 103 million eligible beneficiaries. Average benefits are on the rise, as is the number of people qualified to receive benefits. And they want illegal aliens to receive benefits on top of everything else. Over the next 10 years, there will be a 38% increase in the number of people over 65 years of age and entitled to receive Social Security benefits. By 2039, CBO reports, there will be an 82% increase in the number of those who are over 65 years of age. We have a growing elderly population. Increases will be caused in significant part by the influx of retirees and beneficiaries and the outstretched benefits promised by these programs, particularly with the huge expansion of federal health care spending. These are my words. I wrote this 2015, and it was a very lonely time, Mr. Producer. I didn't hear anybody join in. Nobody. In fact, I keep hearing people running for office saying, we're not going to touch Social Security and Medicare. Well, then you're not serious about the debt. Because now's the time to touch it by grandfathering in those who receive it, grandfathering in everybody who's 55 and older, and then anybody who's younger than 55, adjusting the system, modifying it so they have something when they're done, rather than redistribution of wealth. But no, we can't discuss it. I'll discuss it. Over the next 10 years alone, I wrote, again in 2015, the percentage of people reaching retirement age will grow from the current 14% to 21%. That's exactly what's happened. Concurrently, the number of income-producing individuals will drop from 60% to 54% of the population. CBO projects the trend to continue as life expectancy increases. So I would ask my fellow talk show hosts, seriously, on radio, I would ask the hosts on television to ask the most conservative among our House and Senate representatives, to ask Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, to ask them all, what are you going to do about the entitlements? Are you going to do anything about the entitlements? Because they take up nearly more than 3/4 of our budget. What are you going to do about it? They can go tweet right now. We'll be happy to read it, won't we, Mr. Producer? The federal spending on health care increase is massive. On Medicare, on Medicaid, the Children's Health Program, subsidies for Obamacare. They're massive. You haven't heard a single person talk about it. Not one. Again, in 2015, I wrote, the GAO and CBO understate the true nature of the economic and financial calamity facing the nation. This debate they're having on the CR, you have to understand, this is peanuts. I don't mind the debate. It's important. But it's also a shiny object. It's peanuts. On February 25, 2015, Boston University professor of economics, Dr. Lawrence Kotlikoff, testified before the Senate Budget Committee about America's fiscal insolvency, and I quote him, and its generational consequences. I talked about this 5-6 years ago. He flatly stated that our country is broke. It's not broke in 75 years or 50 years or 25 or 10 years. It's broke today. Indeed, it may well be in worse fiscal shape than any developed country. He condemned Congress for cooking the books. He said Congress's economically arbitrary decisions as to what to put on and what to keep off the books have not been innocent. He said successive Congresses, whether dominated by Republicans or Democrats, have spent the post-war accumulating massive net fiscal obligations, virtually all of which have been kept off the books. He explained that the real debt picture is far worse than the federal government admits. Again, this is 9 years ago. He said the U.S. fiscal gap currently stands at $210 trillion, and that would exceed $300 trillion today. Unimaginable. The size of the U.S. fiscal gap, $210 trillion, he wrote 9 years ago, is massive. It's 16 times larger than the official U.S. debt statement, which indicates precisely how useless official debt is for understanding our nature's true fiscal position. In 2013, the fiscal gap stood at $205 trillion. In 2014, it was $210 trillion. Hence, the country's true 2014 deficit 10 years ago, the increase in its fiscal gap was $5 trillion, not $583 billion, and it's only gotten much, much, much worse. It's over $300 trillion right now. Do you hear a single member of Congress talking about this? No, not one. All the tough guys and tough gals, not one. Professor Kotlikoff concluded, what should be obvious to all, U.S. post-war generational policy is accurately characterized as take as you go, Over the decades, Republican and Democrat Congresses and administrations have taken ever larger amounts of resources from young workers and transformed them to older workers. The resources taken from the young, given to the old, it's called taxes. The late Dr. Edward Gramlich, former Federal Reserve Board governor, explained that for workers to become more productive, investments must be made in education and training and all the rest. He said when the government spends more money than it has, it borrows the rest. Most of the money borrowed comes from private savings. And he went on to warn that we cannot ignore the consequences of deficits much longer. Again, this is 10 years ago. They will lead to a stagnant long-term economy that will not only be unable to support Social Security and Medicare and other social programs, but will not be able to provide opportunity for today's youth who will be paying the bills. That's the real situation. Even the most outspoken so-called fiscal hawks. You don't hear this stuff from Rand Paul. He likes to consider himself the real libertarian, the real fiscal watchdog. He's a mouse. We need a lion. He's a mouse. We need a lion. This has been known for decades. We've been ringing the bell behind this microphone for decades. Decades. And yet we hear crickets. Crickets. So they'll fight over the continuing resolution. That's good. That's a start. But it's a tiny fraction of a percentage of what's at stake. They know it. I know it. And now you know it. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Did you see what the Federal Reserve did literally days after President Trump's victory? It lowered interest rates by a quarter. Do you know why it did that? It's worried about the economy. It's worried about the fact that jobs aren't being created. We're seeing all kinds of shifts in our portfolios, and it's important to stay aware. That's why I'm urging everyone to diversify and consider gold as one of your financial shields. Now, gold has weathered every kind of economic downturn throughout history. I want you to call Advantage Gold. They're the best of the best, folks. I've dealt with all of them. They're the best. They're my gold company. 1-800-900-8000. Get a free gold investment kit to see how you can get started with gold. I recommend Advantage Gold to anyone who's serious about protecting their wealth, and that's you. Call 800-900-8000 for your free gold investment kit, and you can even qualify for up to $1,000 in free silver. That's 800-900-8000. Call them now. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. You'll be very happy with them. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional. So which politician in Congress, including the Freedom Caucus, among others, want to come on this program and have a discussion about entitlement programs? Which one? Walter Williams was right. This is about morality. The devastating consequences, I wrote, of wealth redistribution, intergenerational thievery, massive federal spending, endless borrowing, and unimaginable debt accumulation on American society, most particularly the younger generation and future generations, as a travesty. Stealing from the future does not establish the utopia promised by the statists. It is our generation's grave moral failure. We're accumulating debt, and we're throwing that debt onto the shoulders of our posterity. A debt that we should bear, because we've created it. I'll be right back. The markets are volatile. They're shooting up wildly only to drop without warning. The Fed just cut rates yet again, this time by a quarter point. Why? Because the Federal Reserve is not confident the economy is strong. In fact, last month only 12,000 jobs were created, all of them in the government. That's why I'm telling you again, diversification is crucially important. And diversification with gold is what I do. And the company I use, and I've used many, the best one is Advantage Gold. Call them now at 800-900-8000 for a free gold investment kit to see how gold gold can help you diversify your investments and take advantage now. Now, gold has been helping to protect and grow wealth for people for thousands of years. And in these times, it can be more crucial than ever. When it comes to gold, I trust Advantage Gold. They're one of the top gold companies in America. They're who I turn to when I purchase gold. Call them now, 800-900-8000. Call 800-900-8000 now for a free gold investment kit to see how gold can help you with your investment portfolio, a.k.a. your bank accounts, your paycheck. And when you do, you could qualify for $1,000 in free silver. That's 800-900-8000. Folks, don't wait. Call them now, 800-900-8000, and tell them Mark Levin sent you. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional.
Nobody says it better than Mark Levin.
I'll go with what Mark Levin said, because nobody could say it better.
Call in now at 877-381-3811.
No, I don't just write books to write books and bang the pots and pans like your typical host. Liberty Amendments was a book I wrote. I wrote that book to promote the Convention of States. Simultaneous, and unbeknownst to either of us, with Mark Meckler, who is the president of the Convention of States organization. And we, you, he, his group, have gone a long way in getting a number of state legislatures to pass resolutions in favor of a Convention of States. Because what he knows and what I know is that Washington won't fix itself. We go through this trauma every now and then. We go through these budget cycles every now and then. But in the end, unless there's systemic change, there won't be real change. I haven't heard Rand Paul as one of the leaders of the Convention of States movements, is he? I don't know. Our buddy Mike Lee? Haven't heard him. Maybe he is. I don't know. But you would think I'd know about it. You'd think Meckler knows about it. Andy Biggs, when he was the president of the Senate in Arizona, he blocked it. We got a lot of people who like to talk about this stuff and fight over continuing resolutions. Once again, continuing resolutions are important, but in the big scheme of things, they're nothing. When you look at the size of the budget, when you look at the entitlements, in the Liberty Amendments, I propose Liberty Amendments for the state legislatures to join together and impose these systemic changes on the federal government, on the federal executive branch, on the federal Congress, and yes, even on the courts. There are two ways to amend the Constitution. It's right there in the Constitution, but some people want to pretend there's only one way because they know damn well that one way will never work. Why? Because it involves Congress. You need 2/3 of both houses to get an amendment to the state legislatures. The other way, it's the state legislatures taking the lead. You still need 38 of the 50 state legislatures to approve an amendment to the Constitution. You still do. That said, which is difficult, you need 34 of them to get together to propose amendments. And what are they? To limit the federal budget to a percentage of the gross domestic product. What else? That the bureaucracy can't increase spending through regulations without approval of Congress. What else? It goes on and on with one proposal after another. That Congress must balance the budget within 4 years. Wow, how radical. And other proposals that are in there. And I would encourage Musk, and I would encourage Vivek to take a look at them. Because this isn't about one administration. This isn't about one 4-year period where they win, the next crowd wins, and then blows up everything. This is serious business. And yet, how much do you hear about Convention of States? from the so-called conservatives, or at least fiscal conservatives in Congress, even though Congress has really no role. How much have you heard about this from them? Almost nothing. Some of them will give it a salute now and then, a high five, and then they move on. Are they not serious? Is anybody serious? We have individuals who interview members of Congress and don't even know what the hell the Convention of States is. Morning shows, news shows, afternoon shows, and they don't confront them with it. They don't ask them about it. We have the same people who ask questions, whether it's of the Speaker or other people. They never bring up Social Security or Medicare and Medicaid. They will now that I bring it up, just like they bring up birthright citizenship that I brought up in 2015, that it doesn't exist constitutionally or legally. Or just like when I brought up the conspiracy to take out Trump with leaks from the FBI in March 2017, then the rest of them followed. But on this, every single member of Congress should be confronted. Even the so-called fiscal hawks, all of them. What are they going to do? We'll get a new speaker. Oh, that'll fix it. That'll do nothing. Zero. That's what it'll do. This is about our children and our grandchildren. What we're leaving them. This is about our children and grandchildren. What's happening here is horrendous. It's been horrendous. This isn't new. One continuing resolution. In his farewell address to the nation after serving 2 terms as president, George Washington urged his fellow citizens to quote, and I notice they never quote this part of his farewell address, avoid the accumulation of debt, not only by shunning occasions of expense, but by vigorous exertions to discharge the debts, not throwing upon posterity the burden which we ourselves ought to bear. Don't create debt and throw it on the shoulders of your children and grandchildren. That's what he's saying. And that's what Congress is doing. And that's what administrations, Republican and Democrat, have been doing. Don't touch Social Security and Medicare. We can't tell people 55 and over, we're not going to touch it for you. You're safe. You're grandfathered in. It's okay. Don't worry. You've been made a promise. You've relied on it. Now, if you're under 55, if you want any kind of Social Security or Medicare program, we need to adjust it. We need to fix it. People are living longer. Fewer people are contributing to the program. The program is spending more, much more than it's taking in. But no. None of the candidates for president said so. None of the leaders in Congress have said so. Even the media, even the hosts who claim to be conservatives, they won't bring it up. I bring it up. I bring it up. They won't bring it up. They don't want to lose ratings. For me, it's not about ratings. I'm over 65. We have children and grandchildren. It needs to be discussed. We need to be honest about it. Because this is about morality. Don't we love our children and our grandchildren? Wouldn't we do virtually anything for our children and grandchildren? Some of us would die to protect them, right? So why are we bankrupting them? Now, the left, the Bernie Sanders types, they want to expand Social Security. They want to expand Medicare. They want to expand government health care, which will, of course, crash the entire society. But that's what they want. They want to crash the entire society. They're Marxist bastards. That's what they are. But that's not what you and I want. So it's not just, quote unquote, Speaker Johnson. It's not just Speaker Kevin McCarthy. It's not just Speaker this one, Speaker that one. It's all of them. All of them. I look at this fan dance over continuing resolutions. I do understand the importance of getting spending under control. But you folks understand with me, I think, how unserious virtually all of them are. Because entitlements take up over 3/4 of the federal budget. And they're called entitlements, mean you're not supposed to touch them. The interest on the debt is now bigger than all we spend on defense. Defense is one of the primary responsibilities of the federal government, not redistributing wealth. So tell me, what candidate has run on controlling entitlements, reforming entitlements? Not one. Not one. In part because they feel they're going to lose. Why? Because their opponents will lie about what they're saying. The media will lie about what they're saying. They'll be picked to pieces. But also because too many of our fellow citizens don't want to hear about it. They don't want to hear about it. Cut spending, but not mine. Get the debt under control, but leave me alone. And that's how the Marxists succeed. The more government programs and government entanglements they can create for the vast majority of the population, the more they know that there won't be significant cuts. And so that's why they're fighting over peanuts. Discretionary spending, they call it. And what kind of a country is almost 80% of the spending entitlements and non-discretionary, so we're fighting over 20-25% of the budget? A country that's in a debt cycle. And even our most conservative fiscal hawks, as they like to self-identify, never talk about this. Never talk about it. Never. We've heard about Doge, right? D-O-S-E. Doge. How do you spell that? D-O-G-E. Department of Government Efficiency. There is no such department yet. Maybe there will be. This hasn't been discussed by anybody. Why? The markets are volatile. Did you see for the, what is it, the 11th day in a row, the stock market has tanked over 1,100 points. Now, those who are experts on the stock market, who make their money talking about the stock, it's okay. 11 days in a row, we haven't seen that in half a century. Half a century. Look, we're the point of the spear here. That's what we are. I'm not running for office. I don't want any appointments. I don't need to be on any list about the greatest this and the greatest that. I don't care. The reason I have such a massive audience, the reason you're there, so loyal, and I'm blessed to have you, is because you know this about me. I have no ulterior motives whatsoever. None. And I never have. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Did you see what the Federal Reserve did literally days after President Trump's victory? It's lowered interest rates by 1/4. Do you know why it did that? It's worried about the economy. It's worried about the fact that jobs aren't being created. We're seeing all kinds of shifts in our portfolios, and it's important to stay aware. That's why I'm urging everyone to diversify and consider gold as one of your financial shields. Now, gold has weathered every kind of economic downturn throughout history. I want you to call Advantage Gold. They're the best of the best, folks. I've dealt with all of them. They're the best. They're my gold company. 1-800-900-8000. Get a free gold investment kit to see how you can get started with gold. I recommend Advantage Gold to anyone who's serious about protecting their wealth, and that's you. Call 800-900-8000 for your free gold investment kit, and you can even qualify for up to $1,000 in free silver. That's 800-900-8000. Call them now. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. You'll be very happy with them. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional. I do want to be as clear as I can. This project to slash the size of government is crucial. Slash regulations is crucial. President Trump's fight to make sure taxes remain low and even lower, that's crucial. And on the spending side, cutting spending is crucial. But you can't leave the biggest projects off the table. You got to talk like mature, knowledgeable, intelligent adults Otherwise, they will crash, these programs. And when they crash, the economy will crash with them. Now, you might think that's fear-mongering. Our economy has crashed before. The greatest depression we had was actually in the 1880s. We know of the depression of the last century, which was enormous. And what happens when you have these situations, just like the pandemic of just a few years ago, so that should be fresh in mind, the government becomes more powerful. You know, as a result of the depression, the stock market crash in 29 and the depression that followed for more than 10 years, much a result of what FDR's policies were when he got elected, the government changed forever. Became much more powerful, much more intrusive, individual liberty much more limited, federalism all but destroyed, the private sector heavily regulated, the private sector took the blame for decisions that were made in terms of monetary policy by the Federal Reserve, just like today. And we can go on and on. But it changed our country, just as the COVID-19 China virus changed our country. It showed governors and the federal government that they literally had the power to prevent us from going to synagogue or church. They literally had the power to tell us how far we had to stand from or away from each other. When we had to wear masks, and on, other penalty of imprisonment. What it is that you had to put into your bodies. It literally changed the face of the nation. Some people are fine with it. It's no big deal. But those of us who understand liberty versus tyranny, it was a big deal. And it is a big deal. And when an economy collapses, when seniors don't have those Social Security checks anymore, when Medicare is irrelevant because the hospital system is collapsed, when you can't get the medicines that you need and the treatments you need because the economic system no longer functions. Nobody's going to be talking about the niceties of the Constitution. Nobody's going to be talking about checks and balances and limited government and separation of powers. People are going to demand answers. They're going to demand to have their wants met. And that's what happens. And that's what Bernie Sanders knows. That's what AOC knows. That's what they know. And that's why addressing these issues early on, whether it's acknowledging what's going on with these so-called entitlements, whether it's convention of states, whatever it is, these are battles that must be fought. And we must seek to persuade the American people time and time and time again. That's what we have to do. Again, fighting over the continuing resolution is interesting. It's a fight that's worth having. But it's a pissant battle. It's a pissant battle. Much bigger problems that need to be embraced and dealt with that are being utterly ignored. I'll be right back. This segment of the podcast is exclusively sponsored by Pure Talk. Pure Talk offers great coverage and can save your family money on your wireless bill every single month. Go to puretalk.com to find the plan that's right for you. Thank you again for listening, and thank you so much for this sponsorship, Pure Talk.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Plunder and deceit. We discussed that a little bit in this debate that comes up constantly about the continuing resolution. The Liberty Amendments, I mentioned that. And many of you folks acquired this as well. And I undertook this and I said, restoring the American Republic. That's the first chapter. I undertook this project not because I believe the Constitution as originally structured is outdated and outmoded, thereby requiring modernization through amendments, but because of the opposite. That is, the necessity and urgency of restoring constitutional republicanism and preserving the civil society from the growing authoritarianism of federal Leviathan. This whole thing about massive spending, redistribution of wealth, unbelievable, unimaginable debt is not just a fiscal matter. That would be bad enough. It's a constitutional matter. It's a moral matter. This is not doomsaying or fear-mongering, but an acknowledgement of fact. The statists have been successful in their century-long march to disfigure and mangle the constitutional order, undo the social compact. To disclaim the statist campaign and aims is to imprudently ignore the inventions and schemes hatched and promoted openly by their philosophers, experts, and academics, and the coercive application of their designs on the citizenry by a delusional governing elite. We've been way ahead of the curve for so long. Their handiwork is omnipresent for all to see. A centralized and consolidated government with a ubiquitous network of laws and rules actively suppressing individual initiative, self-interest, and success. In the name of the greater good and on behalf of the larger community, nearly all will be emasculated by it, including the inattentive, ambivalent, and disbelieving. It's too bad Elon hadn't read my books earlier. Do you know, Mr. Producer? And same with Vivek. I'm serious, and I love these guys are great. It's just too bad. They're smart guys. Super smart. The nation has entered an age of post-constitutional soft tyranny. As French thinker and philosopher Alexis de Tocqueville explained presciently, covers the surface of society with a network of small, complicated rules, minute and uniform, through which the most original minds, the most energetic characters cannot penetrate. To rise above the crowd, the will of man is not shattered but softened, bent, and guided. Men are seldom forced by it to act, but they're constantly restrained from acting. Such a power doesn't destroy, but it prevents existence. It does not tyrannize, but it compresses, extinguishes, stupefies a people, till each nation is reduced to nothing better than a flock of timid and industrious animals, of which the government is the shepherd. And as I write, social engineering and central planning are imposed without end, since the governing masterminds, drunk with their own conceit and pomposity, have wild imaginations and infinite ideas for reshaping society and molding man's nature in search of the ever-elusive utopian paradise. Their clumsy experiments and infantile pursuits are not measured against any rational standard. Their piousness and sanctimony are justification enough. You realize I haven't read this book since I wrote it, Mr. Producer? It's coming back. Today, Congress operates not as the framers intended, but in the shadows, where it dreams up its most notorious and oppressive laws, coming into the light only to trumpet the genius and earnestness of its goings-on and to enable members to cast their votes. The people are left lame-brained and dumbfounded about their so-called representatives' supposed good deeds, which usually take the form of omnibus bills, numbering in hundreds, if not thousands of pages. Got it? And utterly clueless about the effects these laws have on their lives. Of course, that's the point. The public is not informed, but indoctrinated, manipulated, and misled. Congress also, and often, delegates unconstitutionally lawmaking power to a gigantic, yet ever-growing administrative state that in turn unleashes on society myriad regulations and rules at such a rapid rate that people cannot possibly know of them either. And if by chance they do, they cannot possibly comprehend them. Nonetheless, ignorance, which is widespread and deliberately so, is no excuse for noncompliance, for which the citizen is heavily fined and severely punished. When did I write this one? Let's see. I wrote this book, stick with me, in 2013, almost 12 years ago. All sounds familiar, doesn't it? Not to be outdone, the current occupant of the Oval Office, who was Obama at the time, sees his primary duty as fundamentally transforming the United States of America. And I go on about him. And it goes on. Today, this is glorified and glamorized as compassionate progressivism. That is, this massive, centralized power grab and devourment of the culture. The framers called it despotism. In Federalist 48, James Madison, considered the father of the Constitution, wrote, "An effective despotism was not the government we fought for, but one which should not only be founded on free principles, but in which the powers of government should be so divided and balanced among several bodies of magistracy, as that no one could transcend their legal limits without being effectively and effectually checked and restrained by the others." By the others. So what are these proposals in the Liberty Amendments? So we've talked about plunder and deceit. The amendment to establish term limits for members of Congress. You cannot do it by statute. This is fundamental and it's crucially important. And not only for members of Congress, but limitations on how long individuals can work as staffers on Capitol Hill. This is crucial too. That's Chapter 2. Chapter 3, an amendment to restore the Senate. The Senate should be chosen by state legislatures. It's not a glorified House of Representatives or House of Lords even. It should have been chosen by the state legislatures because the state legislatures are the closest to the people. Not the governor, not the lieutenant governor, not the attorney general of the state, your state representative. What else? An amendment to establish term limits for Supreme Court justices and supermajority legislative override. I believe in term limits for Supreme Court justices. Many on the left have now embraced that view. I believe in it. Does it mean that some of our constitutionalists will have to leave? Yes. But it also means that some of their kook radicals have to leave too. Because the more the courts act like a legislature, and under the Democrat activists they're intended to, then there's no point to a lifetime appointment. Supermajority legislative override. I said at that point that 3/5 of the state legislatures, not the states as a whole, the state legislatures, should have the power to overrule and annul a Supreme Court decision if it's done within 24 months. Not to rewrite it, not to amend it, to annul it. Same with 3/5 of the House of the Senate. The same power. Why? Because the power of the court is not a power that was contemplated by the framers of the Constitution. Now, this may upset you, some of you, but when we have a court that's a radical court that does radical things for the left, this is a very, very important thing to understand. A very important thing to understand. I propose two amendments to limit federal spending and taxing. An amendment to limit the federal bureaucracy. An amendment to promote free enterprise. An amendment to protect private property rights. An amendment to grant the states authority to directly amend the Constitution with a super number of state legislatures, rather than going through either of the existing processes, because the Constitution is amended every day by radical activists on the courts, by radicals in Congress, and by an unelected bureaucracy. An amendment to grant the states authority to check Congress, and by that I mean an authority to check legislation that comes from Congress, again with a supermajority vote of the state legislatures. No group's going to come up with a better list than this, or a better understanding of what's bankrupting the country, the entitlement programs. We've talked about it here for almost 25 years now. I've written 10 books, 9 of which relate to the goings-on in our country. Rescuing Sprite was the other one. So 9 books relating to really explaining, unraveling what's taking place, applying history and philosophy and economics and reality. Liberty Amendments, Restoring the American Republic, Plunder and Deceit, Liberty and Tyranny, our opposition, American Marxism, the Democrat Party hates America. And I dare say that Millions and millions of these books have sold. Millions and millions of people have read them, including many of you. But unfortunately, a lot of the politicians, the policymakers, I would even dare say Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, have not. They're not compelled to. It's not a requirement. But it seems to me it sure as hell would help. All right, we're going to move into a few other subjects, but I felt this really deserves some focused attention this evening, considering the debate that's going on. I see Tom Massey from Kentucky has said, I will not vote for Speaker for Mike Johnson. Okay, great. Now what? Nothing. He has no answers. He's got nothing. Thomas Massey is nothing. Nothing. Doesn't have a replacement. Doesn't know how to get stuff through. He doesn't have anything. Zippo. These things that I'm talking to you about, constitutional, convention of states, we need to enshrine systemic changes on how Congress works or doesn't work, on how Congress oversees the bureaucracy. I don't see our guys doing this. Chip Roy was on there a few months ago. I asked him about it. He agreed that it needs to be done. Has anybody done anything? No, nobody's done anything. And so they have these spitting matches, these spitball matches over a tiny fraction of the budget. You know, the budget's in the trillions and trillions of dollars. Trillions and trillions of dollars. Our annual deficit's now well over $1 trillion. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
You know, they say free, but what they really mean is see the fine print. There's no shortage of ads from the big wireless carriers offering the latest iPhone for free. But look deeper. You'll realize to qualify, you need to trade in your phone valued at $1,000. You need to be on the $100 a month unlimited plan and pay the $35 activation fee. That's a lot of money for a free phone, don't you think? Well, don't fall for it. Pure Talk, my cell phone company, has a better option. Get a brand new iPhone 14, which has all the bells and whistles you need, plus get unlimited talk, text, 15 gigs of data, and mobile hotspot, all for $50 a month. How about that? Half the price of the big guys, and you get a new iPhone powered by America's most dependable 5G network. Do this. Go to puretalk.com/Levin today. Switching is easy. Plus, when you go to puretalk.com/Levin, you'll get an additional 50% off your first month. Pure Talk, America's wireless company. Joe Biden is the worst president, if not in American history, certainly in the top 3 or 4. And in modern times, he's the top. Close call with Obama, but he's the top. And they want you to believe that the economy was just swimming along under Biden. They want you to believe that he has had the greatest foreign policy. They want you to believe lies. And with their corporate media, they will push it. With the Comcast MSLSD, they'll push it. And so forth. And here's Mika Brzezinski on the Morning Joe. She is the other half of the Morning Schmo show. And they had this guy Sullivan on, the National Security Advisor, who is a complete louse. And, of course, Brzezinski wants to know what he thinks about Pete Hegseth. Cut 14, go.
Can you talk about the dangers or the impact of someone in positions like DOD or DNI and others, where either the qualifications are lacking or there's even potentially outside influence?
All right, let's stop. Aren't you sick of people like this who make these jackass comments? Outside influence. Pete Hegseth has fought for his country in two places, Iraq and Afghanistan. He also served in Guantanamo. Mika Brzezinski hasn't, and Joe Scarborough hasn't. I haven't either. But I don't trash Hegseth as if there's outside influences affecting him, or as if he's not qualified to be the Secretary of Defense. He's more than qualified to be Secretary of Defense. He's even qualified to be President of the United States and Commander-in-Chief as far as I'm concerned. 1,000 times more than Joe Biden, 1,000 times more than Barack Obama, 1,000 times more than Kamala Harris. And they dare to question Hegseth's credentials and to smear him constantly. What does Sullivan say? Go ahead.
So I have been very careful not to comment on the nominations of the incoming administration. I know, and so you put it more in the abstract. I've disappointed a lot of people by being very boring on this subject. Look, all I can say is how President Biden approached these kinds of appointments. People like Lloyd Austin, who a long career in military affairs. People like Avril Haines, our director of national intelligence, a person of impeccable integrity, quality, and capability.
That's failure.
I'll let other people speak to the nominees being put forward by the Trump administration.
Okay. Cut 15, go.
If you just take a step back and you look at what's happened to both Russia and Iran, they have gotten a huge black eye out of Syria. They were supposed to back their guy Assad, keep him in power, and now Russia and Iran are both on the run. Why? It's because they've both been weakened and distracted by events elsewhere. Iran weakened by the military campaign that Israel waged against Hezbollah and directly against Iran with the backing of the United States.
All right, stop. No, they didn't have the backing of the United States. You bums tried to undermine Israel every step of the way, demanding a ceasefire. You kept saying that they were going to create even a worse situation in the Middle East. The public record is filled with these comments, filled with these leaks on and off the record, filled with boycotts of Israel and their weapons, attacks on their citizens, efforts to overthrow the elected government in Israel, including Netanyahu himself. To sit here and take these lies? You funded Iran. You gave them hundreds of billions of dollars, directly and indirectly. You funded them while you were choking off Israel. You jerk, you fool. Go ahead.
And distracted by the fact that the Ukrainians are putting up a very tough fight against them.
You're the ones that told the Ukrainians that they're not allowed to win. You kept pouring billions of our dollars into Ukraine purely for defensive purposes. And they lost over 60,000 men and women in battle. You would not let them win. You were withholding weapons that they needed. You were giving them some weapons that they didn't need. Even NATO was saying, no, give them the other weapons. This guy's taking credit. He said, so as things stand today, as we hand off to the next administration, our friends, our allies are in stronger position. Our enemies are weaker. This is not a bad thing, though. It does bring risks, as we discussed before. So our allies are stronger, our enemies are weaker. You dumb bastard. You did the opposite. You know, they say free, but what they really mean is see the fine print. There's no shortage of ads from the big wireless carriers offering the latest iPhone for free. But look deeper. You'll realize to qualify, you need to trade in your phone valued at $1,000. You need to be on the $100 a month unlimited plan and pay the $35 activation fee. That's a lot of money for a free phone, don't you think? Well, don't fall for it. Pure Talk, my cell phone company, has a better option. Get a brand new iPhone 14, which has all the bells and whistles you need, plus get unlimited talk, text, 15 gigs of data, and mobile hotspot, all for $50 a month. How about that? Half the price of the big guys, and you get a new iPhone powered by America's most dependable 5G network. Do this. Go to puretalk.com/Levin today. Switching is easy. Plus, when you go to puretalk.com/Levin, you'll get an additional 50% off your first month. Pure Talk, America's wireless company.
The Mark Levin Show, live and national at 877-381-3811.
How delusional do you have to be this guy, Jake Sullivan? But you can see the propaganda they're going to push, the books they're going to write. Pro-Palestinian Bronx anti-war coalition in New York City on Sunday. These people should be rounded up. Where possible, foreigners should be deported. People overstaying their student visas should be deported. People who have student visas should be deported. This is the enemy within, as Abraham Lincoln would have referred to them, Donald Trump and others. I want you to listen to this. Cut 16, go.
We need to unite.
We need to unite.
Rise above sectarianism.
Rise above sectarianism.
Rise above religious differences.
Rise above religious differences.
Stop pointing fingers at each other.
Stop pointing fingers at each other.
Our fingers.
Our fingers.
Our pens.
Our pens.
Our rifles.
Our rifles.
Will be pointed at.
Will be pointed at.
The U.S. government.
The U.S. government.
The Zionist entity.
The Zionist entity.
And nobody else.
Wow. I didn't hear this on MSLSD. Did you, Mr. Producer? I didn't hear it on CNN. I didn't even hear it on with our brothers and sisters on our favorite cable channel. We need to unite, rise above. Well, you heard it. Need to point our finger, our pens, our rifles at the U.S. government, the Zionist entity, and nobody else. Wow. That's threats of violence. Direct threats of violence. Crickets. Crickets. Cut 17, go.
Hezbollah.
Hezbollah.
Iran.
Iran.
Syria.
Syria.
Yemen.
Yemen.
The Iraqi resistance.
The Iraqi resistance.
This is the axis of resistance.
This is the axis of resistance.
This is the enemy within. Here they are. Here they are. How much you want to bet they vote Democrat if they vote at all? How much you want to bet? The enemy within. Point the rifles at the government. You don't hear anything. Wow. Wow. The resistance, all these terrorist states. You don't hear anything. Wow. How about that? Not MAGA. Maggots. That's right. These are maggots. This is the true problem. No, you don't understand. Oh, I understand. Little Dick Durbin was caught in the hallway on this continuing resolution. And there's a bit of a pay raise in there for members of Congress. A bit of a pay raise for members of Congress. And yet, I got to give credit to Little Dick Durbin of the great state of Illinois, the home of Lincoln. He had a pretty good comeback from Manu Raju of the Constipated News Network. That's right. He had a pretty good comeback to Manu Raju. Even though I despise Little Dick Durbin. But let's listen to this. Cut 6, go.
Members are giving themselves a pay raise. Do you guys deserve a pay raise?
Well, that's news to me. It's good news. You know, what has it been, 10 years or 14 years of no COLA, no change at all? I think it's about time something's done.
Here's a piece
Well,
of
why don't you just resign then, pal? Get a real job. I mean, if this is really a burden for you, then just leave. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, it is. How would I not know about a pay raise?
But I mean, people look at the performance of Congress and say, why should we give them more money?
What about the media? Think about that for a second.
We're not paid by public money.
I know you're not, but I mean, half of your listeners are not there anymore. You're still getting the same paycheck? What's going on?
That's a pretty good answer, don't you think, Mr. Producer? I have to say, right on the spot there, Little Dick Durbin still has it, I think. Liberal fighting liberal. Yeah, you lost half your audience. You're still getting the same paycheck, aren't you? Actually, many of them aren't. Many of them aren't. But I thought that was pretty funny. And kind of right on. What's happened? I thought the Constipated News Network, a.k.a. CNN, was going to have a slash and burn there for a while and get rid of some of the dead weight, like most of the hosts. Not yet. I thought over at MSLSD, where reprobates go to find jobs, I thought over there that Comcast was going to cut them loose. Still hasn't happened. Wow. I wonder what's going on. They haven't gotten rid of them. Then Joe Biden's outside the White House last night, wandering around in his pajamas. No, not really. But he was outside the White House last night, looking at all the lights. He's attracted to lights, you know. There's a light, guy with a flashlight, he walks toward the light, like a deer. Like a deer in the headlights. He just starts roaming and staring into the darkness. And there he is. And a reporter caught up with him, and there's helicopter news in the background. You know, the black helicopters are coming. You know those old stories, Mr. Producer? Oh, my God, there's a helicopter. They must be coming for us. Anyway, cut 7, go.
Nothing nefarious, apparently.
All right, now let me set this up properly like a pro. Talking about drones. Go ahead.
Nothing nefarious, apparently.
All right, let's stop with that structure. There's nothing nefarious, apparently. Does anybody know what that means? There's nothing nefarious, apparently. Well, if you're going to say there's nothing nefarious, that's one thing. If you're going to say there's nothing nefarious, apparently, then it seems to me you don't know what the hell you're talking about. It's either nefarious or it's not, apparently. Go ahead.
Nothing nefarious, apparently. But they're checking it all out. I think it's just one. There's a lot of drones authorized up there. I think one started and they all got it. Everybody's wanting to get in the deal.
What? See, all of you citizens out there in New Jersey and Virginia and Pennsylvania, New York and elsewhere, you see, one of you started this and then everybody wanted to get in their deal. So you're a bunch of lunatics, that's all. Says Mr. Dementia. But there's nothing nefarious, apparently. You know, it's been my contention, and I admit without proof, that the communist Chinese are behind this. Why? Because it's rational. It's logical. Who else would it be? Bolivia? Botswana? Who else would it be? The UAE? Rhode Island? I mean, come on. Well, Mike McCall, the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, agrees with me. Cut 8, go.
I know there are a lot of commercial drones out there, and Secretary Mayorkas has talked about this. That's fine, but the ones flying over our military bases, by definition, I would say, are adversarial. We need to know who is behind that because I believe they're spy drones. And the PRC, Chinese, Communist China, is very good at this stuff. And we know they bought land around military bases. This would be very consistent with their policy over the last couple of years.
I think he's 100% right. And until we get definitive answers, that's where I stand, too. That's where I stand, too. And we know the communist Chinese have bought and paid for the Biden family, especially Mr. Big, Mr. 10%. We know this. They probably have dirt on Biden. That's my guess. He did, after all, release 3 spies to the communist Chinese. Quietly, secretly. Remember that program we had at the Department of Justice? I believe it was under the FBI. That specifically was focused on communist China. And they're stealing our technological know-how. And remember, Joe Biden canceled it? What did you cancel? We don't like using the name China in the head. What are you talking about? They use the name China. What should we call them? Is there a pronoun for China? No, I don't think so. It's China. China's China. He doesn't mind calling people Hitler and dictators and this and that, but China, don't call them China. I think McCall's onto it. I think I'm onto it. If I didn't, I would correct myself. If I'm wrong, who cares? But the point is, it's a hostile force. And what kind of hostile force would have the sophistication to have so many drones in so many places, mapping so many sites that are crucial to us? And we know the reaction of the Biden, Sullivan, Blinken, Austin regime. You know, they're so qualified. This guy Austin, unbelievable Secretary of Defense. Wokeism, DEI, slashing the Pentagon's budget. My God, he's experienced. That's the kind of guy we need. He goes to the hospital. He doesn't tell the commander-in-chief. Yes, that's experience, ladies and gentlemen. We've never seen anything like Austin. Like Austin Powers, this guy is. I never watched that stupid movie, but I've seen clips. But McCall's onto it, I think. The communist Chinese are mapping. I mean, they were in Quantico, for God's sakes. Doesn't that even concern the military and the FBI? Oh, Quantico, yeah. Must be commercial drones. And we have law enforcement that says, in Virginia, manned aircraft, they were flying these drones. They were synchronized, which is why they think they were mapping. Now, this is the same regime that would be our regime. Check that. The Democrat Party's regime, the Biden regime, that pretended that big, fat, bloated thing in the sky was Chris Christie, that it wasn't a communist Chinese balloon. Remember that? What balloon? So some reporter in Montana happens to be looking at the sky. I'm looking for hawks. And sees this massive balloon. Oh, it must be a weather balloon, says the Biden regime. Weather balloon my ass. More like Christie's ass. But you get the point. And it's floating all over the country over nuclear sites. And so it's okay. It's not a big deal. And then when they're done collecting the information, done transmitting it back to communist China, then they shoot it down over the ocean. Wow. Just move along. So according to Biden, who's very trustworthy, smart as a tack. I don't even know what that means. Oh, he's sharp? Oh, I see. Yeah, he's sharp as a bowling ball. There's nothing nefarious, apparently. Oh, okay, thank you. Why don't you go shuffle off somewhere else? I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
You know, they say free, but what they really mean is see the fine print. There's no shortage of ads from the big wireless carriers offering the latest iPhone for free. But look deeper. You'll realize to qualify, you need to trade in your phone valued at $1,000. You need to be on the $100 a month unlimited plan and pay the $35 activation fee. That's a lot of money for a free phone, don't you think? Well, don't fall for it. Pure Talk, my cell phone company, has a better option. Get a brand new iPhone 14, which has all the bells and whistles you need, plus get unlimited talk, text, 15 gigs of data, and mobile hotspot, all for $50 a month. How about that? Half the price of the big guys, and you get a new iPhone powered by America's most dependable 5G network. Do this. Go to puretalk.com/Levin today. Switching is easy. Plus, when you go to puretalk.com/Levin, you'll get an additional 50% off your first month. Pure Talk, America's wireless company. Bring on the belly dancers. Our power hour is next. Hello, it's next. And I'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Man, do we have two great Life, Liberty, and Levin shows for Saturday and Sunday. Obviously, I haven't done them yet, but I'm not going to announce the guests because, you know, the backbenchers, they're like vultures. So we'll hold back. Over in Breitbart, House report finds no evidence Trump agreed with rioters who called for Pence to be hung. This House report is very, very important. The Committee on House Administration Subcommittee on Oversight released a report finding there was no evidence that President-elect Donald Trump supported rioters on January 6 who had called for former Vice President Mike Pence to be hung. It's actually hanged, but that's all right. In an interim report released on Tuesday, the committee released its findings on the events surrounding the January 6 riot at the United States Capitol. Excuse me, it's cholera. And the politicization of the January 6 Select Committee. Among the list of findings included in the report were ones that found Trump, quote, did not attack his Secret Service detail at any point that day. There was no pre-planned, off-the-record move to the Capitol in the days leading up to January 6th, and there is no evidence, I'm quoting, Trump agreed with rioters calling for Pence to be hanged. That's it, hanged. That's right. The report found that the January 6th Select Committee had relied on nothing other than testimony from Cassidy Hutchinson, a former aide for Mark Meadows, Trump's former chief of staff. Quote, the Select Committee, and by the way, this will not be played on the Constipated News Network, on MSLSD. You won't read about it in the New York Slimes, the Washington Compost. You won't hear about ABC, NBC, CBS, all the frauds, phonies, and fools. Report found that the January 6th Select Committee had relied on nothing other than testimony from Cassidy Hutchinson, a former aide for Mark Meadows, Trump's former chief of staff. The Select Committee, I quote, relying on nothing other than Hutchinson's testimony, incorrectly asserted in its report that President Trump agreed with the rioters chanting that Vice President Pence deserved to be hanged. The report added that in previous interviews with the Select Committee, Hutchinson had failed to mention the allegation that Trump had supported calls that Pence deserved to be hanged, and brought it up in a May 2022 interview. From the report, Cassidy Hutchinson presented an evolving account of the claim that President Trump supported the idea that Vice President Pence deserved to be hanged. Initially, Hutchinson failed to mention this allegation or anything at all related to hangings in either her February 23, 2022 or March 7, 2022 interviews with the Select Committee. It wasn't until her May 17, 2022 interview that the topic came up at all, and it was at Representative Liz Cheney's insistence. No wonder they destroyed so much evidence in that committee, America. No wonder. The report continues to note that Hutchinson's, quote, first narrative of the Channing incident lacks internal cohesion. Initially, Hutchinson reportedly claimed that she personally saw and heard Meadows and Trump speaking about the rioters chanting about hanging Pence and how they personally felt about it at the time, according to the report. Later on, in the same interview, Hutchinson reportedly claimed that she had no firsthand knowledge of Trump's feeling regarding the rioters' chants, and she had neither seen, I'm quoting, nor heard him talk about it with Meadows, according to the report. Now, both can't be true, can they? You know, Dizzy Lizzy took Hutchinson under her wing, so to speak. The report adds that the most specific claim Hutchinson made during the interview regarding the alleged conversation between Trump and Meadows is that it reportedly came from her third-hand eavesdropping of a conversation between Meadows and two attorneys who were serving as White House counsel and as senior advisors to Trump, according to the report. So that's 3 iterations. That can't all be right. Report goes on. Hello, stick with me. Hello. In fact, the most specific claim Hutchinson makes in that same interview about the alleged conversation between Trump and Meadows comes from her third-hand eavesdropping on a conversation that Meadows had with 2 attorneys who worked at the White House and as senior advisors for President Trump, Pasquale Pat Cipollone and Eric Hirschman, respectively. Hutchinson attributes her claim that Trump agreed with the rioters' chant to her recollection of this conversation. In her words, Mr. Trump had hypothetically, potentially, said that maybe, perhaps, the chants were justified, quote unquote. The Select Committee took Hutchinson's 3 conflicting stories of the same incident at face value for their final report. This level of indifference to the veracity of Hutchinson claims permeates the Select Committee's report and serves to highlight Representative Cheney and the House Democrats' willingness to stretch an idea of an allegation into a full-blown accusation, or in most cases, a foregone conclusion. What a sleazeball you are, Lizzie. Lizzie, Dizzy, Lizzie. What a sleazeball you are. What a creep. According to the report, almost 18 months after the events on January 6 and a month after testifying, Hutchinson reportedly suddenly recalled specific details of the alleged conversation between Meadows, Cipollone, and Hirschman. That's Hirschman with 2 N's, by the way. The report adds that Loudermilk and the subcommittee recovered the transcript of the Select Committee interview of a White House employee who'd been near Trump for the majority of January 6th and who reliably testified to the president's actions. The employee's eyewitness testimony reportedly directly contradicts Hutchinson's third-hand account. It goes on. The individual was within earshot of President Trump the entire time the president was in the president's dining room, the report continued. Additionally, in its investigation, the subcommittee spoke with numerous individuals who worked closely with Meadows in the White House, and they confirmed Meadows would not react pathetically to calls for violence. I think they mean sympathetically. Nor repeat an incident like the one alleged by Hutchinson so carelessly in a public space. So what the committee's saying is the likelihood of her third or fourth iteration being true is 0 to none. And so I think Cassidy Hutchinson needs to be questioned again, perhaps in front of a federal grand jury. That's just my opinion. Because if her testimony was false and it was used to try and indict Donald Trump, as the committee sought to indict Donald Trump, then, I mean, everything's fair game, right? Equality under the law. Nobody's above the law. Nobody's above the law. Are they? Except the pre-pardons, the pardons, the this pardon and that pardon. Right. Now we read that George Stephanopoulos, the little bastard who headed the Clinton war room that went out to destroy the reputation of multiple women that Clinton apparently molested or allegedly molested, reportedly. That Stephanopoulos is apoplectic over the Trump lawsuit settlement. Now, he's having to say this now because his brothers and sisters in the corrupt Al Jazeera, Pravda media are furious with this settlement, you see. They're furious. Not because ABC should have been sued and Stephanopoulos should have been sued and they should have paid millions of dollars because they accused Donald Trump of being convicted of rape when he wasn't. They're not worried about that. That's called the truth. What kind of precedent does this set? What do you mean, what kind of precedent does it set? You bums in the media aren't supposed to be lying. That's what kind of precedent it sets. As John Nolte writes at Breitbart, George Lollipop Guild Stephanopoulos is reportedly apoplectic and humiliated over Disney ABC settling Donald Trump's defamation lawsuit, which included a statement of regret from the serial lying ABC News anchor. That's right, little fella. United States Representative Nancy Mace is a rape victim, so to publicly shame her over her support for Trump during an appearance on ABC's This Week back in March, Stephanopoulos repeatedly lied with the utterly false claim Trump is a rapist. Even after Mace corrected him, and obviously angry and bitter, Stephanopoulos kept repeating the rape lie. In the aftermath, Trump filed a no-brainer defamation suit. Last week, the far-left Disney company settled the suit for $16 million and a public apology. This came a day before the tiniest anchor was scheduled to sit down for a 4-hour deposition. Now that they've settled it, he's upset, you see. They settled it so he wouldn't have to do a 4-hour deposition. $15 million will go to Trump's Presidential Foundation and Museum. The additional $1 million is to cover Trump's attorney's fees. Well, now, according to inside sources who talked to the New York Post, little man is angry, embarrassed, and defiant. Better still, the entire ABC newsroom is demoralized by this quote-unquote gut punch. They're not demoralized that George Stephanopoulos lied. They're not demoralized that a man was smeared. They're demoralized that they got caught and they had to pay for it. That's America's Al Jazeera Pravda. Oh, yeah. ABC News anchor George Stephanopoulos, goes the story, is apoplectic and humiliated by the network's decision to pay $16 million to settle a defamation lawsuit brought by Trump, the New York Post has learned. Stephanopoulos, who claimed Trump had raped E. Jean Carroll during an interview with Republican lawmaker Nancy Mace, was particularly upset about being forced to apologize. A source with knowledge of the situation said, George is defiant. One source told the Post. How is he defiant? What exactly is he doing other than whining like a stuck pig? Picturing tiny dancers defiant immediately makes me think of a midget wrestler. All these adjectives, defiant, humiliated, apoplectic, could use a curb to play hardball. I think the word everyone is grasping for is snit. He's in a snit. Only someone beside themselves in a snit would delete his ex-Twitter account, which is what Stephanopoulos did just after the settlement was announced. Much of the corporate media are also in a snit. Here's NBC's Tuck Schmuck Todd. Whatever happened to him? Oh, yes, I remember. I wonder if he ever settled on a hairstyle with his barbershop, Mr. Producer. NBC's Chuck Todd describing the settlement as a gut punch that will make the job more difficult for reporters. Make jobs more difficult? Telling the truth. Oh, my goodness. Well, no one in the legacy media, right, Nolte, say Stephanopoulos shouldn't have said that? He shouldn't have lied? He shouldn't have said Trump is guilty of rape when he's clearly not? George Stephanopoulos lied about Trump. He lied to the morons who still watch This Week. He flat out lied, and people like Chuck Todd are angry that he was held accountable for lying and was forced to apologize. This precedent would never anger a true journalist, one dedicated to telling the truth, but when you're a Chuck Todd, well, that's a whole nother story. Remember Chuck Todd as posted by Mays? It looked back at Chuck Todd before the 2020 election claiming that Hunter Biden laptop story was misinformation and Russian propaganda. And he's got the video to prove it. When he's not spreading misinformation, Chuck likes to shame people for spreading misinformation. Yes, Chuck. Completely disgraced from NBC's Chuck Todd. Do you think the president is afraid to make Putin mad because maybe Putin did help him win the election? And he doesn't want to make him mad for 2020? Chuck Todd can't let the Democrats' bogus Russia narrative end. And it goes on, but I shall not. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Well, they dragged out Lawrence Tribe again. I keep forgetting Lawrence Tribe is still with us, Mr. Producer. And he's been wrong about everything he's burped up, at least in a decade, as best as I can tell, mostly dealing with the 14th Amendment, always dealing with Donald Trump. He's not the man that he used to be. He's transitioned into a dumb old guy, pretty much. Well, therefore, he's on the Constipated News Network yesterday, which has the ratings of a banana. I don't even know what that means, but it sounds good to me. About this settlement with ABC News. Oh, it's my God! What did you do? Anyway, cut 10, go.
It was a weak lawsuit. He was destined to lose it.
Oh, yeah. Says who? Tribe? You accuse somebody of rape who wasn't convicted of rape? That's a weak lawsuit, you know. Well, if somebody accused me of that, I'd sue their ass off, too, and it'd be a strong damn lawsuit. Strong damn lawsuit. You schmuck. Go ahead.
Rather than basically be on the wrong side of Donald Trump, Disney, the company that owned ABC, obviously put pressure on ABC to cave. And that sets a terrible precedent because it means that whenever a media outlet is part of a conglomerate, the business interests of the owner...
Listen to how these clowns think. They come up with their own theories. Their imagination at work. Let's go to the constitutional legal scholar, the retired professor from Harvard, Lawrence Tribe. Well, obviously, they're part of a conglomerate, and part of the business, and the owner puts the pressure on there, and they don't really care about free speech. They've chilled the media here. They've changed it, and it's the beginning. He says it's the beginning of the end of democracy. Go ahead.
Induce that media outlet to silence itself, and when that happens, those who would criticize...
Yes, don't silence yourself when you're accusing somebody of rape who never raped anybody. No, don't silence yourself. Hey, moron, Mr. Constitutional Expert, at the beginning of our constitutional republic, these libel laws were state laws. They were prolific. Politicians brought them. Not until the New York Times versus Sullivan did they change the standard for public officials. What a hell of a lot of democracy, before the Supreme Court made that ruling, Mr. Constitutional Expert. Not. And now it's the beginning of the end of democracy. Whenever these punks don't get their way, democracy's over. Whenever they lose, democracy's over. What kind of asinine, egomaniacal buffoons are these people? Go ahead.
those who would criticize the president or the government are basically chilled, and that is the beginning of the end.
It's not about criticizing the government or the president. Moron. It's about accusing somebody of rape who was not found guilty of rape. Got it? For instance, if I were to accuse you of that, Lawrence, I assume you'd want to bring a lawsuit, which is why I won't accuse you of that. You can't go around accusing people of rape, especially if you're the little fellow George Stephanopoulos with a platform on ABC this week and do it multiple times. You need to actually have some facts. You need to actually speak the truth. It's one thing to make a mistake, to make an error. We get that. But that's not what this was. This was intentional. This was malice. With forethought. Over and over and over again. Got it? Larry? May I call you Larry? Larry. But we go to him at CNN just like we go, who is that other jerk they go to? The guy that was disbarred to work for Nixon, I forget. Remember who I mean? The stupid-looking guy. Well, they're all stupid-looking, actually. But doesn't matter. The Watergate guy. They turn to him for legal analysis. On MSLSD, they go to Weissman. No, not Bob Woodward. He was a reporter. He's a reporter. Mr. Producer, you flunked. It's a multiple-choice test, and you flunked it. No, I forget his name. Dean. Dean is his name. Remember him? John Dean. Hey, I have an idea. What's that, Mr. Executive Producer? When we want to talk about legal cases, let's go to John Dean. I don't think he's a lawyer anymore. I think he was disbarred. I think he had... Hey, exactly. When we want constitutional stuff, let's go to Larry Tribe. Oh, yeah, that should go again. And on MS, let's go to Weissman. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin, the thunder on the right. Call in now, 877-381-3811.
Holy Moses. Where's this show gone? Got less than a half hour left? Gracious goodness, Mr. Producer. Gracious goodness, America. Let's take a call or two, shall we? Let's see how we do. Let's take a look here. Let's go to Gail, Malvern, Pennsylvania, on the Mark Levin app. Gail, how are you?
Hi. Good evening, Mark. I'm doing well. Hope you are.
Thank you. Yes, I am.
Good evening.
Thank you. Yes.
I'm calling because you were talking about drones, and I have a concern that...
Drones, a.k.a. liberals, but go right ahead.
They're not being addressed. And one theory that I heard, which even though it might not seem viable, in a way it seems viable because they're letting so many unvetted people into the country and unvetted with weaponry and drugs. And the theory happens to be that they're saying the military knows there's a dirty bomb and that these drones are going all over searching for radiation, perhaps to find a dirty bomb.
You know, dirty bombs don't leak radiation. When you use a dirty bomb, radiation is spread, but it's not like there's a bomb that's leaking radiation. Do you understand what I mean?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
So I don't know. I mean, I'm hearing all these theories, and I mean, I'm not one to jump into these areas of speculation. But whatever the reason may be, I do believe it's an enemy. I believe it's the communist Chinese, and if I'm wrong, our government can just prove it. Prove it to me and prove it to the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee. Because who else would have the capability of doing this in waves? Who else would have the gonads to do this? Who else? Maybe somebody that flew a massive balloon over the United States and was mapping our various nuclear sites? And then the reaction of the Biden regime then was to first deny it, pretend it didn't happen. Some journalist in Montana is looking up in the sky and he goes, what the hell is that? And we're told it's a weather balloon. No, it's the communist Chinese spy balloon. And when it's all done, gathering the information and transmitting it back to headquarters in Beijing, then they shoot it down. Oh, wow. Anyway, ma'am, thank you very much for your call. I do appreciate it. Let's continue. Let's go to Jeremy, Los Angeles, California, the great KRLA, where we are live and national. Go right ahead, sir.
Mark, you are the man. I just wanted to call and personally say thank you. Thank you for opening my eyes. I've been voting the wrong way for the last 27 years.
Well, thank you.
Mostly because that's just how my family votes. So I guess it's just values passed on. You're a very educated, well-spoken, very patient guy. Even though I hear your frustration, you still have your patience. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you very much for opening my eyes.
You're a sweetheart. Thank you, Jeremy. I really, really appreciate it. You know what? You're a really smart guy. The fact that you grew up in a Democrat family, you voted Democrat for all these years, and you're listening, you go, wait a minute, I got to think about what he's saying. And I'm guaranteeing it didn't happen overnight, right? You just start listening, and then things start to make sense. And God bless you, my brother. That's wonderful. You made my night. I appreciate it, Jeremy. You take care of yourself. Although I do have to say one thing. When I was going to propose to my wife to marry me, the night before, I was very nervous. I don't know why. And we're eating at then our favorite restaurant in Hope Sound, Florida. Fortunately, not there anymore. Flash Beach, owned by our buddies Rob and Anita. And man, did they make grouper. Oh, my God, but that's a different issue. All right. So I'm there kind of not myself. I'm nervous. I knew the next morning I wanted to propose to her. And I looked up, she said, and I said to her, you know, Hannity says I'm impatient. You believe that, Mr. Producer? I've ever told you this story? Hannity says I'm impatient. And she looks at me and she says, I know. Not that Hannity said it, but that I'm impatient. And then I went back to eating my grouper and so forth. And then the next morning, I was so nervous again. I didn't ask her to marry me. I said to her, and this wasn't intentional, I said, I want to marry you. And she politely says, well, you didn't ask me. So I asked her. She said yes. How about all that, Mr. Producer? And I'm only basing that on Jeremy saying even though I'm frustrated, I'm very patient. And so for now on, that is what I'm going to tell my wife. I'm frustrated, but I'm patient. That's what I'm going to tell Hannity for now. I'm frustrated, but I'm patient, damn it. Let's go to another caller, shall we? Mike, Pine Top, Arizona, on the Mark Levin app. You know, we have a lot of people using the Mark Levin app, using XM Satellite. I want to thank all you folks, as well as our affiliates out there. Mike, how are you, sir? Uh-oh. That one's not working, Rich. Should I try another? Let's go to Rod, Eugene, Oregon, the great KUGN. Rod, how are you, sir? I thought we fixed this, no? No, we're not going there. The guy's called 3 times in a row, and Mr. Call Screener, we don't take the same caller, 3 times in 2 weeks. I just wanted to alert him to that. So I'm asking you, is the phone line fixed or not? I mean, do we have a new phone line? So are we waiting for a new phone line? I mean, the American people have a right to know that we're operating with bubble gum and Scotch tape here. Well, screw this. We're not going to keep doing this if it's not going to work. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Kathy the governor of New York. It always sounds like there's something in your throat when you say her name. An accidental governor Cuomo had to step aside, and then there's Hochul, the lieutenant governor. Good Lord, who the hell is that? Then she wins by the skin of her teeth, literally. She'd get blown out now with illegal immigration and Lee Zeldin, but timing's everything. And she's a dim bulb. She's one of those dim bulbs, 25 water in a chandelier that's supposed to have 120 waters. She's a 25 water, flickering to a 15. And she's in Albany yesterday. And here's some of the genius that she burps up. Cut one, go.
Now, historians tell us that the Electoral College was a result of compromise, devised by our founders in search of a consensus.
All right, hold on. So let's just listen to that sentence structure. A compromise in search of a consensus. That's repetitive. A compromise, by definition, is in search of a consensus. But let's go ahead. Go ahead.
And a unified United States of America simply didn't exist. And in many regards.
No. Let's slow down, because you're a historical illiterate. Whoever wrote that for you is a historical illiterate. It wasn't a compromise in search of a consensus. It was a practical resolution to a problem. You had big states and you had small states. You had states with big populations and states with small populations, and some states with populations in between the big and the small. So little states with little populations weren't going to join the Union, this new country, if we were electing the most powerful individual in the country just created by these states, a president, by the popular vote. Why would Delaware join with Pennsylvania? It wouldn't. And so the decision was a genius construct called Electoral College. And remember, back then, most countries didn't elect the leaders of their country. Most countries were ruled by sort of military dictators, monarchies. Nothing like the United States was going to be. So they came up with this genius idea, the Electoral College. The Electoral College. You can't just have a popular vote. Then you wouldn't have a country. Now, what else does the genius say? Go ahead.
We honor the talents, the wisdom, and the genius of our founding fathers. But there are shortcomings that still impact us today.
What is that, genius?
I believe that we must reflect on whether the time for this particular institution, the Electoral College, has passed. Mm-hmm. Now, recall that the Constitution, as ratified, also contained provisions that we consider abhorrent, such as women and people of color being denied the fundamental right in a democracy, the right to vote.
Excuse me, the Constitution never denied women the right to vote. It never denied black people the right to vote. Where does that say that in the United States Constitution, Mr. Producer? Yeah, it's next to the abortion clause. States denied women the right to vote. States denied black people the right to vote. In approximately 10 states, black people did vote. So, I'm second to none. I take a backseat to no one in denouncing slavery, that's for sure. And I've talked about it and I've written about it, and it's something that's a fact. But the Constitution doesn't deny the women the right to vote or black people the right to vote. Period. Go ahead.
The founders themselves created a path to amend our Constitution to keep it a living document.
The founders actually didn't do that. The framers of the Constitution did. The founders were the ones who fought to create this country, who signed the Declaration of Independence. The framers of the Constitution, some of whom had been founders, they were the ones who wrote the Constitution and the pathway to amend the Constitution. Why do I feel like we're in third grade here and I'm having to teach the dunce student in the back row? Go ahead.
To be adapted as future generations and circumstances and times require.
Mm-hmm.
For the Electoral College, that time has come.
What time has come, you idiot? What time's up? Go ahead.
Less populated states have outsized influence, and in fact, the votes of their residents count more than the residents.
All right, I have an idea then. Let's eliminate the Senate. Why are there 2 senators from every state? Why should we have a Senate? They're not representative of the legislature. The people vote for them. Why are there 2 senators for New York and 2 senators for Delaware? That's not fair either. So let's eliminate the Senate. Hey, I have an idea. Let's eliminate the bicameral Congress. Let's have a parliament. Well, the framers said no parliament. We want 3 branches of government. We want the president separately elected. We want every aspect, every corner of the society to have a role. Small population, big population. Agriculture, inner city. That's what they did. And you jerk, you don't even understand our history, but you would burn it down anyway. There. History in 60 seconds. We salute our armed forces, police officers, firefighters, emergency personnel, our truckers, our brothers and sisters in Ukraine, our brothers and sisters in Israel. We have your back. And you, the American people, red-blooded Yanks. God bless each and every one of you. I'll see you tomorrow.